Hello and welcome to the Thinking Cap Solutions podcast, talking everything content, audience engagement and leadership. My name is Corey Kay. This gentleman is Mickey Maher. Hello, mate.
Hey, Corey.
And today's topic is video killing the podcast star. Now, we have referenced video and the extension of it for podcasting in previous episodes, even as recently as our Sure Things of 2025. Not hard to see, and we're seeing it 3 months in, that the growth of video extending beyond your podcast is just at extreme levels and really complements a lot of strategies out there for content creators. But the reason for this episode, a couple of reasons. There's a LinkedIn post, which we are going to reference from a content creator challenging the video and the need for it for audio. And there actually is a report which has just been released, which is worth referencing. Very well known, the Infinite Dial report out of the United States. Mickey, your job, explain it to us, but let's not get confused with all the numbers. How would you break it down?
So, look, the Infinite Dial test is something that's done every year. It surveys the digital media consumption in America. It's conducted by a company called Edison Research. I think they've been around since the late 90s doing this kind of study, and it basically tracks consumers' trends around streaming, podcasts, consumption, radio, smart speakers, social media, and a bunch of other stuff. And then that information becomes available, and that's very useful, not just for the media organizations or the content creators, but those that try and target it, let that be marketing or advertisers or brands. So it's really actually interesting and useful information, and it really captures a great sense of the broader community and what's happening here. And in our radio careers, we were exposed to this information that sort of could see what was moving in America, and then we could track it to how it compared to what's going on in Australia.
And the key findings were 70% are listening to podcasting, which is just a phenomenal number. Half of them are watching podcasts. So video's become a really big part of it.
We even sort of spoke about this on episode 6 some time ago because we could see this happening. And look, I think it's a moment around the growth of podcasting continuing. But the great thing is, as we sit here right now, is that number continues to grow at a very healthy number every year. I think currently, based on US numbers, it's around 7% year on year. Interesting, here in Australia, the consumption of podcasts is actually slightly ahead of America and continues to do so. The audio element of podcasting continues to be the clear number one. We identified through trends of back end of last year, and hence it made number 2 on our top 5 list of this year, was the growth and consumption of video elements within podcasting. And as we sit here now, we're seeing now not only is it 50% of people are consuming some element of visual, there's a portion of that only exclusively consume podcasts or a visual element. And typically like YouTube, where YouTube is now the number 1 platform for consuming podcasts.
And we want to talk about it today because we actually at the forefront of it, having clients who are asking for video straight away without actually looking at their audio solution. And we want to reference a post by Jack Lawrence. For those who don't know who Jack Lawrence is, he has a highly successful podcast, which is audio-led. He is one of the leaders in his field doing extraordinary things. But he wrote this post, which was essentially, he's like, okay, is it TV now? Because I can't keep up with TV. I believe in audio. I don't want to be creating TV shows. So he's got this line, all this talk about adding another element into what is already a tough grind can make it seem like even more out of reach for those getting started. So I'm here to say, if you enjoy video, then use it to enhance your show, and that's great. But if not, don't worry about it. Just keep creating amazing podcasts with phenomenal audio.
Yeah, and today's episode is to give some greater context to that point, right? So because it's not black or white, and I think that's where Jack's talking about there, and credit to him. He's a guy that's evolved his career, transferable skills in content creation. You know, it's millions of downloads on his 1 Minute Remaining podcast. He's got, Crime at Bedtime podcast, which is getting millions of downloads as well. And he recently started another podcast, which is already off to a cracking start, all audio led. So the grey area here is that absolutely visual element of your podcast is key as the success and interest in podcasting grows. The grey area is it's not for everyone, or the aspect of visual is dependent on the type of podcast that you do. But it's not your starting point. It should always be, and we talk about this with our clients, Corey, when they sort of say to us, but we need to do video. We absolutely, no one want to do a podcast and it's got to be visual. We go, but why? And typically the response is a weak one, which is, because people tell us we have, or everyone tells us that you've got to do video.
Because everyone else is doing it.
Just because everyone's doing it doesn't mean it's right. Surely we know that. So the thing is that we always start with, well, first and foremost, let's actually identify that you've got a story worth telling. Then let's make sure it's great in the audio element. Then if we feel that there's added value, and added value is a critical piece, then let's explore how we bring in visual and or video into that. Video's not for everyone. It can be quite expensive to do, particularly if you're going to fund it yourself, getting the right kind of cameras and lighting and stuff like that. Slightly cheaper option is, hiring a podcast studio, and they offer some great services, no question about that. But again, you've got to go, is the hundreds of dollars an hour that I'm forking out for that going to give me the return on numbers? Is it actually going to increase the amount of downloads because of that or not? And most of the time, depending on the brand and the type of thing you're trying to push, the answer may not be absolutely there. So the right answer is somewhere in the middle. And we'll talk a little bit later in this episode, the types of different ways you can bring a visual element that doesn't necessarily require hundreds of dollars of hiring in studio or thousands of dollars buying the equipment to do full-length video podcasts.
So let's do a two-person survey. How much listening versus watching are you doing?
Look, I love listening to podcasts. I listen every day. 90 to maybe 95% of mine are audio-led. And for me, and I'd suggest I'm not alone here, it's probably the reason why the audio element of podcasting is still the clear number one consumption, is because I don't have the time to sit down and engage in my screen to watch a podcast. So for me, I consume them when I'm in the car, doing my daily walk or doing stuff around the house, and I can put it on the smart speaker and be moving around. So that's one of the advantages of audio. And two, a lot of the podcasts I consume, I get everything that I need in an audio sense. I don't need to see the visual. That said, there's a couple of great ones that I do crave seeing because it's interesting. Typically for me, it's ones where there's guests, in particular profiled host and or guest, because I actually want to see that interaction. So, I love Abby Chatfield's podcast, and while that's in an audio version, there's also the video. I love that because I just love her expressions and exaggerations and stuff and the interaction with the host. So I love that. Joe Rogan, another one, because of the caliber of guests that he gets on. So I'm interested to sort of see the body language and to see what's sort of going on there. Side note to that, though, Joe started out doing audio only as well. It wasn't until sort of his profile grew significantly, the listenership came, and then he got, a big company to pay hundreds of millions of dollars, that it turned to let's invest in video as well. And so there are a couple that I consume from a visual sense, but most of mine, it's audio.
And it's a horses for courses situation. We mentioned Joe Rogan, and there's a video extension for that, and there's phenomenal numbers given his profile and the guests he had on. But for some, that is not the solution. In Jack's case, it is audio-led because he can paint the pictures with his words, and the video is unnecessary. It has me thinking about our clients who are just starting out and this perception that they need to have video, and there's that client where, because everyone else is doing it, well, we have to be doing it. And it was that conversation with them. Let's focus on the win. You don't have profile, and we're still building your performance. You're going to be judged by the audio. So let's get that right, and let's focus all of our energy on how we are doing our content, how we're executing it. And the video extension can follow on from that. And what I mean by that is when we're ready, when we've got the actual product that we're here to do right first, and then look at doing the video.
The growth of video is there, and it must be part of your strategy in 2025. But we want to clarify that grey area is when you do it, how you do it is subjective to what the core message of what it is. And it means nothing having a visual if your story's not great. The value of both of them are important, but get your audio right first. Then let's look at the visual aspects that we bring in and when's the right timing for it. So for some clients, like the one we're working on at the minute, that's possibly 6 months down the track. For others, it might be up front. And like I alluded to with my example with your Abby Chatfield and your Joe Rogans, there needs to be a reason to what's that visual going to have that perhaps can't be captured in audio. And sometimes it's because of the dynamic personalities of the hosts or the guests that you absolutely want to be that fly on the wall and see what's going on there. Other times it's a nice to have, not a need to have. So got to take those things into consideration.
And I think of those who've gone down the path already. Bloke in a bar, I remember catching up with Miles, who's a big part of that. product. And that started off as an audio only solution. And I remember because we were working with a couple of NRL guys who were looking at doing it, and they absolutely want to go straight to video. So I wanted to seek out someone who'd gone down that path before. And this is what Mickey and I are thinking, starting with the audio, work on the product first, because at the end of the day, that's the performance. That's what you're putting on the field. And then all of these other elements will start to build in a little bit later on. And that's exactly how Bloke in a Bar started. Bloke in a Bar is a TV show now, and they've got massive numbers. But it was just that reminder of get the performance right. And the performance is the audio. And to Jack's point, and I love his passion around protecting audio, because if you listen to Jack and the way that he articulates himself, because he is an audio first person and he uses his voice, the way that you see this a lot with the crime podcast, Mickey, where don't even think about video, because hearing their voices and the way that they talk about it and they paint the picture is so powerful. The jump to want to get to video, some of it being a little bit of ego, some of it being a really great marketing tool and makes complete sense. But I think it's important that we do protect the audio and the storytelling. That's such a great medium to consume.
Yeah, and we talked about at the start of the year that gap between the audio and the visual podcasting elements will close. But I still believe that the audio version of podcasting will continue to be the number one. And I stand by the reasons for that being the ease of consuming it. It's not just the quality, the great storytelling, and as you say, the power of words, but also it's the convenience. And let's be very clear on that. Because when it's audio only, you can pick and choose when and where you listen to it. And most of the time you can multitask when you're doing that. As soon as you add a visual element, that's not necessarily the case. Now, that shouldn't necessarily steer you away from it, but it's something that you have to consider to go, if there's a visual element, what does that mean for the consumer? Because all of a sudden they have to change their habits to want to consume this. So are we able to make it worthwhile? So they are going to stop, find the time for however long your podcast goes for to absolutely consume that. So the workaround on that, though, which is what we talk with clients about is, well, there's other ways to bring visual to life. That can be clips, short video clips that you use across your socials to promote it, behind the scenes stuff. And again, depending on the profile of you as the host, or perhaps the guest that you have on will somewhat determine the value that behind the scenes footage can have. You could do a bite-sized summary video of your podcast that you use as a teaser for it. There's a bunch of stuff, and let's not go into a shopping list of here, but our point on this is there's more than one way to show visual and video as part of your podcast, and it's not necessarily doing full-length episodes, because that absolutely is not the right response to everyone.
If video excites you and you believe and you know that it adds something to your product, go for it. But don't feel like you're falling behind just because you haven't filmed yourself yet. Just keep creating amazing audio.
So look, if you need a hand to get your podcast started, or maybe it's to really identify what is that story that you want to share, then please reach out to us. We can work with you to help find that story, work with you on the audio solutions, and even discuss that visual aspect and when's the right perhaps timing and ways to do that. thinkingcapsolutions.com.au is where you can get to us, or on LinkedIn, Thinking Cap Solutions, all one word.